Hello, everyone. Welcome to the talk with Andrea Klunder today. I'm so honored to have her here on the summit and being part of the Singularity Circle, where she is going to talk and tell her whole story that has led her to where she is today. Andrea and I first met because she hosts Chicago Creative Women's Brunches, where she invites different speakers to share their expertise and all collaborate together in supporting each other in our creative endeavors, in our entrepreneurial endeavors, and lots of other things. So she's combining her online workings with her offline workings, and she's crafting community offline right now. So Andrea, thank you again so much for joining me on the summit and for being open to share your story of how meditation and podcasting saved you from so many different things. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Isabel, and thank you for hosting this amazing summit. This is really cool. I've been enjoying watching the other women speak and share their stories, and it's been really inspiring and a good opportunity for me to kind of think about all of the things that have happened in my entrepreneurial years and think about how everything comes together to create a story that is not just my personal story, but can also be helpful for other people who are trying to do stuff and meeting obstacles or challenges or resistance. And I am as you mentioned, the executive producer and host of the Creative Impostor podcast. And this is a show that I launched last fall in 2015. That's last year, right? 2015. And it wasn't easy to get there, to get to that show launch. There's a pretty long, convoluted story. I'm going to try to give the short version of it. But the Creative Impostor, people hear that title and they think, that sounds cool, but I don't really know what that means. It's about that little voice that pops up into your head every time you have a great idea or something new that you want to try or something that you want to do that you've never done before. And that little voice chimes in and says, well, who do you think you are? You can't do that. No one's going to care. No one's going to buy that thing. No one's going to listen. No one's going to read it. You might as well just go back to school and get another certification for you.
Yes.
And it's actually, the syndrome is actually a term that was coined in 1978 by two psychologists. So it's a real thing. It is a real thing. It's not just a figment of your imagination, but it's usually attributed to high achieving people. And as entrepreneurs or creatives or intuitives, we have a tendency to be high achievers. And it's the inability to internalize your own accomplishments and a pervasive fear of being found out to be a fraud. So no matter what you do or no matter what you create, and no matter what success you have, there's this part of you that feels like you don't deserve it. You don't own it. And someone somewhere along the line is going to figure out that you're faking it and you really don't know what you're doing after all. And you know, in this in this world of social media and online presences and celebrity and things like that, we have all these people that we look up to and we admire and we see them as being successful. And we see someone who we think, if one day I could just be like that person, if one day I could just have a business that looks like that person's business, or if one day my Facebook feed looked like that person's Facebook feed, then everything would be great. And those comparisons and those feelings sometimes get in the way of us doing our own true, real, authentic work. And so this show is centered around interviews with people who I perceive to be really inspiring, who are doing creative things, taking risks, thinking outside the box, and tuning into them to find out, first of all, do they hear this voice? What form does it take? And what do they do to do their stuff despite those little imposter gremlin voices that pop into their head? So we have the interviews, and then I also share meditation tools and techniques, because that's part of my background, is teaching yoga and meditation, particularly in a way where it's not just like, here is how we meditate and the benefits are blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Do it. But there are real life applications for how, as a creative person and how, as an entrepreneur, you can use these techniques and these tools in context to help you do what it is that you're here to do. So that's kind of what the show consists of. And, you know, this idea of imposter syndrome, I never knew that it was a real thing until recently. And as a child, I never experienced this feeling, right? I never felt like a fake or a fraud as a child. And I think as children in general, you know, we never think, oh, is somebody going to find out I really don't know what I'm doing? You know, we just do stuff. And I know I was always very creative. I was always starting things. I have two specific memories that pop into my mind. There was a time when I went door to door in my neighborhood, trying to sign up all the kids in this neighborhood for a soccer league.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
I had no idea how to play soccer. I think that I went to like summer camp and we played soccer like one day, and I thought it was kind of fun. So I decided to like sign up all these kids for this fake soccer league, not knowing how to play soccer. And my parents didn't even know what I was doing until one of the parents called my parents and they're like, do you know your daughter's walking around like signing up kids for a soccer league? And then there was also this time when I created my own radio show using like, I have a memory of a bright blue Casio audio cassette recorder from the 80s. And I was recording an audio show or a radio show, even though I only had like a handful of musical selections on tape to put on my radio show and a piano that I didn't really know how to play. But I thought for sure, like all my friends and all my family and everyone's going to want to listen to this radio show. So I would just create stuff. And, you know, even as I got older and in middle school, high school, college, you start to have more failures. You start to have more disappointments. You start to have more no's where you try to do something and somebody tells you no, or someone else gets picked for the solo in the concert or the school musical. And though you have these experiences, you just keep doing stuff and doing stuff, or at least I just kept doing stuff. And that carried through all the way to becoming a yoga teacher. And in 2008, launching my first actual business, which was a yoga studio and spa in Chicago. And super risky business model, you know, storefront, overhead, the whole 9 yards. I'd never run a business before, had no background in business other than like a 5-week course that I took. And it never occurred to me that that business would fail. I thought that I had done the research, I had done the hard work, I was willing to put in the hours and really push and really go for it. And at the end of 5 years of that business, I ended up closing the business. I ended up filing bankruptcy, I still owe my parents and some other relatives a ton of money that they gave me to start this business. And I was emotionally and energetically bankrupt. So here I was starting this business that was designed to help people relieve stress, that was designed to promote a healthy lifestyle and help people escape from the urban craziness of Chicago and relax and be healthy. And I was a hot mess.
Yeah.
Not healthy, no energy. And I kept hearing at that time, you are your brand. You have to take care of yourself. You are your brand in one ear. And then I kept hearing in the other ear, you have to push if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, and you have to do what it takes and be prepared to have sleepless nights and work, 10 hours or 10 days a week, 28 hours a day, and forego social commitments and tell your friends, I'm building this business. I can't do dinner. I can't hang out. I can't go to a show. And it was these two messages going on in my head, and I didn't know how to reconcile it. So I ended up closing the business, and I spent a good amount of time hiding under the covers of my bed, not wanting to get up, not feeling like doing anything, feeling for the first time like a total fraud, feeling like well, I told everyone I was going to quit my day job and start this business. And I kept saying, yeah, entrepreneur, starting a business, go get it. Who needs a job? Screw the 9 to 5, all these things. And here it was not working for me. And I didn't know, if I don't have a business, I'm not an entrepreneur. And if I'm not an entrepreneur, who am I at this point? I'm just a yoga teacher, which felt like, meh.
Yeah. The identity was all wrapped up with this. And if I'm not this, then I am nothing.
Right. And that was literally how I felt, was like, nothing. I can't do anything. I don't want to do anything. Nothing is working. Nothing is interesting. And that was the first time I ever really experienced depression. I had heard people, talking about depression, and I didn't really get it. I'm like, I get feeling sad, I get feeling disappointed, I get feeling down, but then I always bounce back within 24 hours. And this lasted much longer than 24 hours. And so I spent about a year after closing that business in some deep self-reflection and meditation. Fortunately, I had a pretty strong meditation practice at that time. And it was not consistent at that time, because sometimes people perceive meditation as this way of calming the mind and relaxing, and that you should always feel better after you meditate. And the truth is that the first time you go to meditate and it stirs stuff up and it brings up emotions, and you feel angry at the end of your meditation session, or you feel resistance, people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. That is not what I signed up for when I started meditating. But it's truly this like healing process that sometimes needs to dig up those deep things, those internal things that we haven't quite processed or we haven't quite dealt with, in order to bring it to light and in order to work through it and move to the other side. I had great mentors and coaches and teachers. And I remember my primary meditation teacher, her name is Elisa Commerce. I was doing a program with her at the time, and she and my meditation cohort all knew what was going on with me with the yoga studio, and they could see that I had wrapped my identity up in this business and what I was doing, and that I needed to separate from it. But I couldn't see it yet. And I kept saying, but I just don't know what to do. I don't know what I can do. I feel like I can't do anything. I feel like I'm nothing. I feel like I have nothing. And my teacher, Elisa, said to me, if you wake up in the morning and all you feel like doing is nothing, then just let yourself do nothing. And, right back, that type A high achieving brain was like, do nothing.
Yeah.
My life is in shambles. My finances are in shambles. All this stuff is falling apart. My health is a mess. How can I do nothing? But it was the wisest advice, because sometimes when you go through a major upheaval like that, it's like a wake up call where you just need to get quiet and get still and stop trying to do so much and just be with yourself and reflect and digest, so that you can process what the next best step is. And somewhere around that time, I started listening to podcasts. I have no idea how that started. I can remember the first few that I listened to, but it was something that I just started doing. And I found them really comforting. And I also started to realize that there was this whole community in this online space, using this audio production medium of podcasting to have really in-depth, interesting conversations about things, to create businesses, different topics, and to create whole communities around these podcasts and these shows. And slowly it started to dawn on me, this is something I can do. I mean, I made a radio show using a Casio audio cassette.
Yes, it started when I was young. I'm going to bring it back again.
And so I was like, this is something that I can do. I can do this. And this is interesting to me. It was like the first thing that was actually interesting to me. And so it took about another year of research and trying out different ideas and kind of talking with different people and saying, if I had a show about this, would it be interesting? what would be interesting to you? And the creative imposter really came from looking at my own experiences and also the experiences in the community around me. So I had already started this meetup group that you had mentioned, that where we have the brunches. It's called the Chicago Women's Creative Collective on Meetup. And I'd already started this group a number of years ago, and it kind of had a few different iterations of what that group was about. But I knew that I wanted to be surrounded by women who were creative. And I wanted to create a space where we could all get together and support each other and share ideas and not feel isolated in our creative work and have a community. And so I started just asking people in that group, what's your biggest challenge right now? What's holding you back from doing the thing you want to do? What do you want to do? And what's holding you back? And what would it take for you to just go for it, to just write that book, or for you to start the blog, or for you to create a new business, a side hustle from the 9 to 5 that you're currently doing? What would it take, and how could I support that? And all that feedback that I was getting and all the observation that I was getting in my community, plus my personal experience, really came together into the creative imposter. And I learned 4 main things. I think I probably learned 1,000 things from one failed business plus starting this new venture. I learned that community is so important. I was trying to build community with the yoga studio, but I think because I wouldn't let myself do the social things and I wouldn't let myself go to other people's events, and I felt stuck in that location, in that storefront. Like I felt like I had to be there, I had to be working. I couldn't just be out exploring the world and making connections. That was the antithesis of community building. And now with resources like the meetup group, like the mastermind singularity circle that you've created, like Nikki Nigl's About Women discussions in Chicago, where we first met, like online groups that I've joined, Facebook groups. There's one called She Podcasts. It's all about supporting female podcasters in this mostly male dominated space. There's just all these different networks that when I go out amongst the people,
Yes.
the community sort of starts to gel together. And then you learn, how can I be of service? And who can I be of service to? And that was another big takeaway, is rather than saying, I want to start a yoga studio, and then trying to think of who is my market, who do I do that, I think reverse engineering that and saying, I want to be surrounded by creative individuals and I want to help them do their creative thing. How can I do that? I can create this podcast. I can teach them visualization techniques that help them get in touch with their creativity and help them quiet that little imposter voice. That was a huge takeaway. Giving myself permission to be myself, rather than, oh, I should be a yoga studio owner because that's what you do when you learn how to teach yoga. If you don't want to run around to every different studio and gym teaching at all these different places trying to earn your paychecks, then you must be a yoga studio owner, because that's just what you do. And if you're going to be a yoga studio owner and you have to do things this way and your studio has to look like this. But in this space, I can say, this is my brand. This is what's important to me. This is what I like doing. This is what I don't like doing. This is how I want things to go. This is who I want in my community. That is like so much easier than beating your head against the wall, trying to solve a puzzle of who you should be serving, what you should be doing, what it should look like. And then the 4th thing that I learned is there's always something you can do. You are strong enough and smart enough to bounce back from and recover from any loss, any quote unquote failure, any disappointment. It might take some time and some trial and error and some pain and some heartbreak, but there's always something that you can do. And the practices and tools and techniques that I'm sharing through the podcast and through my one-on-one consultations and my group classes are really designed to give you your own personal toolkit so that when that devastating thing happens or the disappointing thing happens or you get the big no, you can still push forward and make cool stuff.
Oh, that's so good. And you're the expert at this because you just reverse engineered your story and how it got to this and how you are not a creative imposter at all because you've gone through this whole thing. And for anybody that is feeling like a creative imposter, or they've had a big failure, or they're thinking about starting a business and they're going through all of these courses and they're getting their MBA, they're getting their, and they're getting all these steps that they're supposed to do, because that's what everyone does. Like, I have this idea and I'm going to put it out there and people are going to buy it. When it's really today, especially where we're hyper connected, hyper aware, people are craving community. You start with community first. And like you said, who do I want to be surrounded by? Not what everybody else is telling me what to do, but who do I want to be surrounded by? And I think that's something that we as entrepreneurs, we as individuals, and we as human beings don't ever ask ourselves, what do we want?
Yeah, it's your business. I mean, why would you design it by some external description of what that business should look like? Like, you can create anything. And so I think sometimes that like wide open space of you can create anything is like terrifying and overwhelming. So you start looking for limitations to keep yourself safe rather than saying, this can be anything I want. And I mean, yes, you do also have to like know that what you're offering is something that someone will want, because you could create anything and no one could come.
Yeah, that's an open possibility.
But if that happens and you say, that wasn't quite right, let me tweak it, let me go back to the drawing board, let me check in with myself, like what was missing from that, what was the missing puzzle piece, or what needs to shift in order for this to be useful for someone else. But I think if you're starting with the community and you're listening and you're observing what needs there are out there and seeing what the commonality is, and you start with that, who do I want to serve and how can I serve them, you won't design something that no one wants.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you came from a place of, what do I need right now? And it was community. And I remember you shared your story at the brunch, where like, there are artist groups, there are writing groups, there are theater groups, but then I'm just around theater people, or I'm just around writing people, I'm just around podcasters, and there's no cross connection. So you're like, you know what, I want to do my own thing, and I want to bring these groups of different creatives together. And you invented something that did not exist, and there's no blueprint for. And now somebody, if they want to do something like that, they can go to your website, they can hear your story today and say, oh, there's nothing like this that exists. I don't have to wait for somebody to create something. I can be the one that creates this because I need this. And I'm going to be super selfish and create it for me.
When I created that meetup group, I mean, it literally was like 2:00 in the morning or something like that. And I was searching around for a group to join. I couldn't find what I wanted. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna make this thing and probably no one will join it. And I don't know if anyone will really care, but let's just create it and see what happens. And then it ends up, turning out to be this thing where we have a total of, I think, like almost 900 members now.
Wow.
Not everyone's active necessarily, but like a pretty good core group of active people who are either coming to the co-working sessions that we do, or coming to the brunches that you mentioned, or doing like active in the Facebook group or things like that. So it's definitely a small but growing cohort of people. And it's like my dream come true, because there are people who are writers, there are people who are artists, there are people who are entrepreneurs, there are people who are nutritionists and health coaches, there are people who own Etsy shops. It's like all these different creative minds that are coming together and sharing resources and getting ideas and supporting each other, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, if somebody wants to work with you or attend one of your workshops or learn more about meditation, all of that, where can people find you and where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so the best place is thecreativeimpostor.com. That's my main website. And you can spell imposter with an O-R or an E-R at the end. Today's will get you there. It was like I spelled it one way and then realized there were two spellings, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to get the other domain. So either one will get you there. And specifically, there is a link that you can get a free download of what's called Yoga Nidra, which is a 30-minute guided visualization practice and meditation for deep relaxation and for connecting with your own creative source. And you can either go to the website and click Work With Me Yoga Nidra, or you can just type in creativeimposter.com/Yoga Nidra, all one word. If you have no idea how to spell it, just use the menu.
Beautiful. Well, I am so glad that you shared your story and were open and vulnerable enough to share your story, your expertise now that you have, that you can now guide us through that, like going to your brunches, going to your website, taking time to meditate. Because I'm also a big fan and big proponent, big person that says meditation is going to change your life. Yeah, it's just sitting still, but it's more than just sitting still. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to hearing, and I got your podcast, on my phone, and I'm sending people your way. If you want to connect with Andrea, head over to her website. And Andrea, thank you again so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you. Bye.